Alright, this is Chapter 4, Lessons 3, 4, and 5. This is all about adding and subtracting fractions, both with like denominators and unlike denominators. So I'm going to concentrate on all of that, but we're going to kind of go quickly, and I've changed a couple of the problems. I'll be doing some problems off page 294, some problems off page 302, only some of them I even switched a little bit to make them a little bit more difficult. Alright, so to review, we're going to be adding and subtracting fractions. Let me just remind you that to add and subtract fractions, you have to be in a common denominator. That's the first step, is you have to be in common denominator. Alright, I shouldn't say the first step. The first step, of course, is find out what you're doing as far as integers, because we're going to be dealing with things like this. Addition, they have the same sign, so we add and use that same sign. I a lot of times already go get my answer, my negative or positive, and put it there because I need to remember when I add these together, they are working together, so I'm going to add them and I'm going to use that same sign. So now I need to find a common denominator for 6 and 9. Remember, I'm only concentrating on these two numbers. They do not match, so I have to find where they match. Some people will just multiply them. 6 times 9 is 54. That's fine. But I'm going to go to a better one because I noticed that 6 and 9 also match at 18. So I'm going to go to 18. Remember, whatever you did to the bottom, so this time I took it times 3 to get from 6 to 18, I do to the top. So times 3 would be negative 15. Okay? Whatever I did to the bottom down here, I took it times 2 to get to 18. So I take this top times 2 and I get negative 8. I already know I'm going to add and use that same sign, so I'm really dealing with their absolute value. So 15 and 8 is 23. We do not add the bottoms because that's just the size of piece we have. So I have 23 18ths. I can divide that. 18 will go in there once with a remainder of 5. And I already know my answer is negative. So negative 1 and 5 18ths. Negative 1 and 5 18ths. All right. This is number 5 off page 294. We have a subtraction problem. So what should you still be thinking? Leave, change, opposite. Leave, change, opposite. They now have the same sign, so I add and use that same sign. I already know my answer is positive, right? All right. Once again, I look at the denominators. They do not match, so I have to go to find a common denominator. 8 and 4, you could multiply them and get 32. You could see that they go both go to 16, but don't they both go into 8? So I could just leave this one as 3/8 and just change this back one. You multiplied by 2, so you multiply by 2. You have 3/8 plus 2/8, which is 5/8. Once again, you add the tops, you leave the bottoms alone. Alright, so let's do a couple that have mixed numbers in them. Number 1, 8 1/2 plus 3 4/5. I would view this as two problems, a whole number problem, a fraction problem, and then of course simplify afterwards. So addition, they have the same sign, so I add and use that same sign. I notice they do not have common denominators, so I'm looking at 2 and 5. 2 and 5 match up at 10, that's their common denominator. You took this one times 5, so you take the top times 5. Let me remind you why you do that. You're really taking it times 5 over 5, and if you take it times 5 over 5, that's the same as taking it times 1. So here you're taking it times 2 over 2. Times 2 times 2. You're ready to add them. 5 plus 8 is 13 tenths. 8 plus 3 is 11. There's only one problem. We need to simplify, right? I have enough to regroup and make that into another one. So I have, if I divide that, just to review, top number goes in the box. It goes in once with a remainder of 3. That's 1 and 3/10. You put that 1 back with the 11, and now you have 12 and 3/10. 12 and 3/10. Okay, number 2. Number 2 already has a common denominator. That's nice. I'm still going to do leave, change, opposite. They have different signs, so I subtract. I already have the larger absolute value on top, so I'm ready to subtract. They have a common denominator, but I notice I only have 1 and I want to take away 5. That means I have to borrow. To review, if you were in decimals and you were wanting to borrow, you borrow 10 pieces and you just put a 1 there. But that's because you borrow 10. Here, when you borrow, you're borrowing however many are in the denominator. You borrowed 6 pieces plus the one you have is now 7. Now you're ready to subtract. 7 minus 5 is 2, 6. 6 minus 3 is 3. We could simplify this 2 6 to 1/3, 3 and 1/3. One last one. In the same way, if you had 4 minus 2.8, but you didn't have here, you could put 4.0. Same thing here. You have 0 pieces. You can make them anything what you want because you don't have any of them anyway. Might as well be in common denominator. You have to borrow. You borrowed 8 pieces. Add it to that. So 10 and 8/8 is the same as 11, right? Subtract, you get 5/8. 10 minus 6 is 4. The key here is you have to be in a what? Common denominator to add and subtract fractions.